Okay, he is... I think he's 4F. 4F.
This is My Big Story.
Let's double check.
And I'm Christopher Swan. Okay, here's me in Woodside, New York. That's over in
7F.
Queens for you guys that don't know.
I was wrong.
I'm here to meet Dustin Harder, or as a lot of the world knows him as, the Vegan Roadie. That's because Dustin is on this mission to share veganism with the world. But he's doing it in this all new way. He has this amazing show that's bringing his messages to life, and that's called the Vegan Roadie, hence the name. His show is just like something you'd see on the Food Network. It's big production, colorful, and he's traveling. In fact, he travels the US finding the best vegan meals and teaching restaurants how to offer vegan options. And then in his latest season, season 3, he goes to Italy. Okay, so I love his perspective and energy. He's full of energy. And I love how he's doing what he loves and making his moment work for him. I can't wait to share how a Broadway actor becomes a vegan chef, an educator, and still finds a way to entertain us.
Hey!
Welcome.
Hi!
Good to meet you.
I was just mentioning, because I'm recording this as we
Fantastic.
go. I was just mentioning, I said,
Dustin, it's so good to finally meet.
Yes, it's excellent to meet you as well.
And I'm sitting in your apartment, which is amazing. We just turned off the air conditioning,
Yes.
so we'll see how far we get along with this without both sweating.
I'll have my moments, but it's good.
I'm sure I will too. I'm, for some reason, wearing 2 shirts. Okay, let's talk about vegan. Let's
Sure.
talk about that world.
Yeah.
Because I think this is going to be the really curious question for a lot of people that say, so Broadway guy now wants to talk about vegan. So why do you want to tell the world about I want to call it a vegan lifestyle.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
I don't know
you
what
can
you
call
want to
it.
call
Whatever you want to call
Maybe
it.
it's just vegan food. But
yeah,
like,
whatever you want to call it.
why do you want to tell the world about it, and what do you want them to know?
I mean, the thing is, when I went vegan, I did it for health reasons, and then it became everything else. And when I got interested in food and realized how easy it was, and how I felt better, and not only in health but as a person, I felt my life changed. I became a more compassionate person in general. I became more patient, all of the above. So if those things happened for me, I certainly want to share that experience and hope that it enlightens other people to feel better in life, whatever that might mean for them. And it all sort of came together with food. And from there, I've just been meshing the past with the present and moving into the future. The past with being, theater and entertainment, and food and everything I've learned from that, and bringing it together and sort of trying to entertain people and reach people that way, as opposed to being aggressive by telling people they should be vegan, because I believe people should find their own balance and create what's best for them from that, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, nobody wants to be told what to do.
Nobody
anyways.
wants to be told what to do. So I figure if I can take it, it started to seem the universe started to align when I went into the vegan world suddenly at a certain point.
What do you mean by that?
When I decided, I eventually went to culinary school because the Broadway gig was, I've only done one gig on Broadway. Beyond that, it was all regional theater and summer stock and all this stuff like that. And it was intense. It was great and dream come true, but very, very intense. And I was like, okay, I want like a little bit of a break. I knew I was going out on a tour 6 months after the Broadway gig. So I was like, I'm going to go to culinary school. I've been so into vegan cooking. What was the question? Why did I go here? You said, what do I mean by what?
Align, the universe aligning.
Oh, yeah. So when I did that, when I went to culinary school, all of a sudden in the middle of it, I was like, what am I going to do out on this tour the next time? And why am I here in school? And then I was like, there's nothing like diners, drive-ins, and dives for vegan food on TV. And that's been disappointing to me. And the minute I started to explore that and think about how I could make that a reality, things just started to line up. And it's not to say that it was easy or that it's been easy, but it started to make sense. My life started to make sense. What I wanted to do and where I wanted to go and how I wanted to get there started to make sense. And challenges that I used to maybe ignore, or fears that I would ignore and be like, no, don't do that, I started to face head on for the first time in my life. I'd be like, no, go do this, take care of business. That's going to mean the next thing can happen. So just the pieces started to fall into place, I guess is what I mean. And it felt right to be creating what I was creating.
So then you created the Vegan Roadie, which is your web series that you've had for 2 seasons, and you're about to do a third.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about why you started that, or maybe even the premise to help everybody understand.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, just like in Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, the idea was to go around the country. I had toured for probably 10 years leading up to that, and been vegan for maybe 5 then at that point, and I was like, this is difficult on the road. But also was noticing really exciting places to eat that didn't make it difficult. So I was so excited to share that. And then in that process, I started to realize it's not difficult. This is totally doable when you actually sort of do your research and invest and you're prepared to travel as a vegan. It's not difficult at all. So I wanted to just make it fun. I wanted to take the pressure off of people. I wanted people who were maybe curious about veganism to have an entertaining resource that wasn't telling them they were doing something wrong or judging them, because I don't believe in that. I'm not going to be able to talk to anybody by being like, you do this and that's terrible. If someone wants to tell me they ate steak, good for them. Now, if you have questions for me about veganism, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Yeah.
And I don't mean good for them hurrah if there's any vegans
Yeah,
listening.
no,
but
it's your
I just
thing.
mean that's your life right now. But
Yeah.
if you have questions about veganism for me, I'm here for you. What do you have? Ask me, So the premise was to excite people and to entertain. And in the process, hopefully create a resource and enlighten and engage people so that they didn't feel that becoming vegan was a burden, or that it was difficult, or scared of it. I was intimidated by vegans when I went vegan. And it probably kept me on the fence about it for a good year.
How so?
Back in the day, now there's becoming different groups of vegans. There's, some that are just excited about it. I keep hitting the mic. I'm so sorry.
I don't hear it, so you're fine.
Oh, great. Hey, nailing it. Look at this equipment.
Nailed the interview. We're done.
We're done. Thank you so much. There's different groups of vegans. Some are very aggressive. Some are, excited just because there's a great new world of vegan stuff out there. And so they get excited and they share it with people. And there's some people who are like, oh, well, yeah, but it's not whole food plant-based, and just very different groups. Mm-hmm. What I think we all need to do in any way to make the effort stronger, for more people to see how beneficial it can be, is just to be excited and support each other, in our plant-based endeavors, our vegan endeavors, whatever they may be. So back 10 years ago when I first started, to me at the time, it just seemed there were a lot of aggressive activists who were telling me I was doing something wrong up to that point.
I think you just nailed it too when you said activist.
Yeah.
Because that's different than just being vegan and doing something consciously. That is actually advocating and driving an agenda.
It's true, though. I do think there's different types of activism.
Well, sure.
For
Isn't
me, when I make food, I feel like I'm being an activist, but it's not an aggressive form. And I'm not necessarily saying that's bad.
Right.
Because I think we all have our place. I think we all belong here. We can all help each other out on that mission. My hope is that someone sees what I do, they get interested in vegan food, they try it, and if they're so inclined to check out somebody who's on the more aggressive side of activism, then that's their choice to do that, and that's there for them to see. But at the time, I remember feeling very bombarded by negativity when I was trying to get into it. And then I picked up a book called Skinny Bastard, and that infused humor.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that book, and because they did that was the second one after Skinny Bitch.
Yeah,
I know one of the authors.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Is she funny in real life? Because in the book she's hysterical. Whichever one it is, they're hysterical.
Yes.
That book for me was a turning point, because when I picked it up, I was like, this is hysterical. I was like, and they're calling me out on some bullshit. They're educating me. Can I say that on here?
You can say anything.
Fantastic. That they're calling me out on stuff. They're educating me, but they're also making me laugh. So I keep wanting to turn the page and read more. And to me, that was the perfect balance of everything. Those were all the right ingredients. So in a way, that's sort of when I got inspired, not to create the show then, but just to move forward and realize, I was like, oh, there's other stuff out there. It's not just all people who are telling me I was doing something wrong.
Sure. It's a little bit of what your angle is, isn't
totally.
it?
Absolutely.
It's not about making people laugh, but it's still about this resource that's entertainment.
Right.
mean, is there a future vision for this as well, where you have this great content, but well, and I mentioned this when I got here. I'm like, oh, you're hustling. Like, I mean, I know there are crazy lots of things that you're working on.
Yeah.
So where do you want to go with the show, or what do you
I
want
mean,
to do?
I would love for it to end up on a network like Amazon or Netflix or Hulu or anything like that. There have been conversations here and there, different people, I mean, business like this, it just, things come and go, conversations are had and then maybe dropped for 2 years and then something comes up again.
Yeah.
Like, you just keep putting the content out there and the material out there, and you believe in it, and you try and do your best work and believe that there's a future for it. And I absolutely believe with 100% that there is a future for this. This is my last season doing it on YouTube, because I've produced the 3 seasons by myself. It's very time consuming. It's been 3 crowdfunding campaigns. And by the 3rd one, people are looking at you like, I gave you money twice already, even though they love the content. They're like, why am I giving you? So they start to lose sight. And in the vegan world, a lot of us are trying to help each other out. We don't have money to give each other all the time. We're all trying to do our own projects. A lot of things are startups,
I'd say you're in the middle of all of this. You've been doing this for a while. You've been really focused on this, and you have some other stuff coming that we'll talk about in a moment. Sure. Do you feel like you're like in the grind, like you're loving it, or I'm still doing it, I'm still trying to like push through?
That's a great question, and I feel like I'm in a transitional point, which is one of the reasons I've said I made the direct choice that this was the last year on YouTube, not just because, I'm producing it myself and that's a lot of work, but because I feel in order for it to go next level, at some point you have to go, okay, that's it for here. And it's going to move on to whatever else it's supposed to move on to. And I felt this was definitely, I wasn't going to do a season 3. And then Italy reached out, or Vegan Travel Club reached out, and I was like, how do you say no to that? And it seemed right. Again, going with your gut and trusting your instinct of these things are happening, taking signs from the universe and saying yes to it, and so you have to be careful always saying yes to signs from the universe, I feel. But saying yes to this and moving into that and sort of bringing it to a closure on YouTube, specifically I'm talking about YouTube, and being open to what's coming next, Did I answer that question?
You did.
I start talking and forget what we were talking about.
But
Just
then
so
you said
excited.
something, and now I want to ask about this. Not that you probably had a full answer, but it's a little opposite than things I've heard recently when you said you got to be careful to saying yes to things in the universe.
Sure.
Because probably in the last few months, I've had guests that say, you know what, say yes to everything and figure it out as you go.
Yep.
I'd love to know a little bit of like, what's the warning that goes with
Yeah,
that?
what I mean with that is, again, this goes back to me saying I'm a stickler for time management. You need to be careful with your self-health. You have to take care of yourself first. While there can be a lot of great signs from the universe, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should always do it. Which is a big lesson I've learned. There have been a couple jobs I've had in the last year, and actually another chef said that to me. Someone was asking me to take over this big project, and I was just like, I don't know how I can fit this in and do it. And she looked at me and she goes, you'd be good. And I was like, yeah, so I should probably, she goes, but she could see I was just like, taking it on was going to mean a lot of other things were going to take the back burner, and that was not a good thing. And she was like, but just because you should do something doesn't mean you should do it. And in that moment I was like, okay, while you might have a lot of great things coming in, you sort of have to weigh things out and do what's right for you and take care of your health first. Like that's a big thing. And time for me is part of that.
Vegan isn't my world. So, but I live on the West Coast.
Sure.
In the Bay Area.
Yep.
So it's everybody else's world, and I live all around it. And the area we live in specifically, we actually kind of say it's very granola.
Okay.
Like it is a lot of that. I couldn't throw anything and not hit a vegan.
Right.
But that sounds so horrible. But it's all good.
Why
actually,
are you hitting vegan?
I know.
Why are you throwing things at vegans?
Why are you so violent, Christopher? Gosh, I didn't know you were a hater. No. But here's what I'm curious about. Is there a negative side to this? And what I mean by that is, have you seen or received any backlash for like sharing this knowledge? Because maybe to some people it feels like an agenda, or it feels like something else. Because it's a switch. Not everybody believes in it.
Well, what's interesting is the most negativity I've gotten is from vegans. And that's why I say there's which is, I hate saying this, but there's different groups of, it's very, what's the word? Segregated, the vegan community. And it shouldn't be. And there's a lot of us that believe that it shouldn't be, and we all try and be very encompassing, and we want us all to get along. Some people, though, are just never going to be happy with the way you're doing things as a vegan. I cover on my show, this is the example of that. I cover on my show, I do restaurants, not just all vegan restaurants, but restaurants that offer something for everyone. Because in my activist brain, that is saying to you, you can take your whole family here if you're vegan and you need to make sure you have something to eat. And not only that, when you order that delicious vegan plate of pizza, or whatever it is, your mother or father who might never consider eating vegan food might look at you and say, oh, that actually looks good. Can I try that? And that is a moment. Like that is a moment where someone who's trying plant-based food who might not normally try it is trying it. So I support these restaurants that are putting vegan menus on their items. And also I feel as vegans, we have to support these restaurants because they're making an effort. And how do we expect there to be change and progress if we don't support places that are actually making effort? They serve something for everyone, but they're including a vegan option. We don't want it to leave their menu, so we need to go to that place and order that vegan option to support it. So I do get some backlash from vegans who say, I can't believe you would go to that place and support it. They serve meat.
I wonder if part of your education isn't just what I thought originally, the general public, but it's also other vegans about bringing a community together and saying, hey, we can be different in the way that we approach it.
Sure.
But let's join.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had, there was a podcast I just did a month ago, I think actually, where the host was vegan and we had a whole conversation about this. And his purpose is to sort of talk to vegans and, say, hey, let's all get along. Like we're going to have differences in the way we're trying to, complete our goals, but let's support each other because ultimately the end goal is the same, So I think that it's definitely, that's definitely part of what I do. And I do have some vegans that come up to me on the flip side of that negativity and say, thank you for doing this the way you do it. We get it and it makes sense. And your content needs to exist for people that are not vegan to like just even think about it. And that's the moment I'm like, okay, good, keep going. What you're doing is like, you're doing something good and right. Like, keep going. Okay.
Like I got this.
Someone gets it. Someone gets it. All right, cool.
Well, even beyond the show, I know you're doing some other stuff and you have some things that you're working on. What can you share and tell us about where you're going next?
Working on my first cookbook right now called Easy Vegan. And it's going to be out probably the same time. Season 3, Italy's coming out February 2018. The book should be out around the same time. So that's been consuming my world this summer, and I love it. It's stressful, but it's one of those things where, again, it's a sign from the universe, like moving in the right direction. You're like, oh, this is going in the right direction, and it feels right. And honestly, I've been learning about myself in the kitchen, trying to this book is for, you and I were talking about earlier, people who might not be familiar with cooking, period, let alone vegan cooking. So I've tried to take specialty ingredients out of it, special tools that you would need, and really break it down to what you can use. Like a blender is the most specific thing you need so far. A blender, a stovetop, and an oven are like the things you need.
I'm smiling here because I just flashed back to our conversation earlier.
About a food processor. Yes.
When you said specialty tools.
Yes, please.
I think you should just share that. Comment, the question you asked me.
We need everyone right now to get on Twitter and tell us if they have a food processor in their home, basically. Yeah. Yes. Well, you and I were speaking about, I asked you if you had a food processor growing up, because I have created recipes that you don't need a food processor
Which is actually super smart.
Do you think?
I actually do, because
that's what I'm trying to figure out now.
Well, could they use one if they wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Well, but now you've made it approachable or easy for people that
don't have one. Okay. All right.
See?
I'll take it.
I've just validated that.
Christopher says I can do it.
Could you put a note, a little asterisk?
Oh my gosh.
Christopher Swan approved.
or tips from Christopher.
Yeah.
If you have a food processor. I'm not giving you
follow
royalties.
Christopher's steps. If not, follow mine.
No royalties for you on that, though. Just so you know.
I'm fine with that.
Just so we're clear, right?
Just so we're clear. It's on the recording. Yeah. Okay. And so that's how I'm in print. I love that. That's
done.
Great.
You're like, you knew you would work it in.
I knew. I was planning all day.
Manipulated and finagled.
Yeah. I want to ask about this learning process that you've
Sure.
had, because you've dived into this and you jump in, like you said, your goal wasn't to be a YouTube star,
Right.
but you're in the space as well, and you're all these other avenues that you've not done before. I mean, that's daunting.
Yeah.
You have to learn as you go, but like, what have you learned as you've done it?
Well, it's interesting you bring up the YouTube thing specifically, because I had a manager I was talking to between season 1 and season 2, and he was talking to me about what the plans were and what are you going to do and this and that. Well, you need to push being a YouTube star. You need to collaborate with other YouTubers, and you need to come out with videos that are only 5 minutes long, and you need to do it this way. And at that point, I had been a little frustrated, because I was like, before I even spoke to him, I was like, I'm not a YouTuber. So like, what do I do with this? And so his immediate go-to was like, you're a YouTuber and you need to accept that. So I tried to. And in trying to, I did a little off series called Oh My God, That's Vegan, where I would talk to people about, we would try vegan food. People who are not vegan would try vegan food. I'd have cookbook authors on, and I would make a little something out of their cookbook with them. It was just different from the Vegan Roadie, not restaurant focused so much as it was just jump cut style. And it was YouTube style, I guess you could say. And it was great. I loved the things I did with people, but like I wasn't invested in it the way I'm invested in the Vegan Roadie, because I was never invested in being a YouTuber. Just as I'm not invested in being a social media influencer. There are people that do that and they do it well. And that's, I do the work of being a chef and being a creator and hosting a show and producing a show. There just so happens to be an Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook account attached to it, you know? So some people have been like, here's social media influencer, the Vegan Roadie. And I'm like, well, okay, sure.
I think people don't know what to label things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When you live in
yeah.
these divides,
Yeah.
because I really think of you as like a chef, an entertainer, and maybe like a creative or a creator.
Sure.
And the social stuff is just the stuff that surrounds it.
Well, and yes, for us, but for some people, social media is what they do.
Sure.
Like that's their...
Right, social media influencers is a real thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think people outside
The
of that
lines
space
get
don't
blurred
understand
sometimes. Yeah.
if you're just really good at social.
Right, which... It's interesting.
So what did you learn from that when you, was it learning about that what you were not?
Yes, it was, because I tried to like mold myself into like, okay, I'm going to do YouTube videos. They're going to be this long. I'm going to collaborate with people and I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I did it and it was fine, but it wasn't completely genuine, because I wasn't feeling it. Like it was very time consuming. I was doing it on my own. And I had these other things I wanted to do. I wanted to work on food. I wanted to work on the next season, you know? So it felt like, it didn't feel right, because there was the actual stuff that is in my brain, the work for me that I wanted to do. And I wasn't invested in like, how do I get more followers on YouTube? I was invested in making TV quality production of the seasons of the Vegan Roadie that I was doing. And that's where I wanted to spend my time. So I learned that just because a manager tells you you're one thing, or people are telling you, not just a manager, anybody, people will always tell you what you are and where you should fit. Don't listen to them, you know, and it might take some time to figure that out. And in the beginning of a project, when you're certainly trying to figure out what your path is, and I'm still not completely there, you know, it's always a process. But you are going to listen. You've got a manager talking to you who works with Food Network people. You're going to listen to that person and be like, oh, I need to be a YouTuber. And then I'm going to do a TV show from that. That's how that's going to happen, you know? So I tried it. That didn't work, you know, so on to the next. But yeah, I learned a lot about what I wasn't necessarily in that, especially in terms of YouTube.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I've even experienced that myself.
Yeah.
It's, I can even reflect on that. It's when we talk about these things, like you're a chef, you're this, you're that, but you're not these things.
Yeah.
I've tried to explain what I do to people, and most of them are like, wait, like Tony Robbins? I'm like, oh, no.
You're like, bless, thank you.
I was like,
my goodness.
I was like, you know, he's great at what he does, but
Sure.
I do not want to be him.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not on stage. I'm not walking on coals.
Where's
It's not
your
my thing.
headset? I was amazed you weren't wearing a headset
Right.
today.
Well, you didn't see it when I walked in.
Oh, okay. Flipped it down.
But it's interesting because I think there's a lot of self-discovery in these moments when people are doing their own thing. A lot of people on the outside will just see the recognition of doing something successful and wonderful, and that you know what you're doing. It seems so easy, right? But what they haven't seen is this journey of you discovering who you are through trial and error. It's not just you woke up with a passion and said, like, maybe you do have the passion, right? You know, you have passion for this food and for the principles that go along with vegan.
Right.
But that didn't give you a roadmap.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's you find out not just what you aren't, but you find out what you are. That's the whole point of it, but in pieces, I think, is what we're getting at, you know, and it's all part of that process of really going into things, and not everything works out. You know, the first cookbook came along, and in the back of my brain, I was thinking cookbook. And now, as I've started doing this, I was like, I'm going to become a cookbook author. Like, I actually like this work. And when I was in culinary school, I was like, I don't want to work in a restaurant. So what am I doing with this? And then that sort of brought on. And as I've started working on cookbooks and doing recipe development with restaurants, I'm like, I like developing the recipes. I don't want to be on the line making food every night at a restaurant, but I like making the food, like creating the recipe and creating something from scratch, creating something that people haven't had before. So finding the things, because I don't want to be negative and say it's not just about finding out not what you're not, you know, it's about really starting to hone in on the things that you feel you're good at offer something.
I mentioned that it was probably trial and error, but is it also you looking at other people or speaking to other people or reaching out to find out what you do and do not want to do? Because sometimes we don't even know what the options are. Like, how do you find out that, great, I'll use an example. I don't want to be a line cook. I don't want to do that, but I want to do these other things. How do you even know some of those other things exist? Well,
I think you have to be open to it. You have to be open to, you know, if someone comes to you with an option saying, oh, I'm going to try that.
Or are you also just asking a lot of questions, you know, like people in those spaces?
I'm a very observant person. So I knew I worked in restaurants a lot in my 20s as an actor. So that's what you do. And I knew waiting tables when I would go back in the kitchen and, you know, being sweaters as we are, I was like, I don't want to work in this hot kitchen. Like, what? So, and it's been interesting now because now I've worked a couple dinners as you know, pop-up dinners as a chef, and I get into the kitchen and I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this, and it feels great in the moment, but I'm like, I couldn't do this every day. Like, that's not for me. So it is throwing yourself into certain things that you also don't think you would be comfortable with to realize, oh, maybe I do want to take this further, or no, it's not for me. Because sometimes you avoid things because of fear, when really it is like what you should be doing. You know, I could have been, it was certainly fearful and daunting to take on creating the Vegan Roadie. And I could have said, no, that's too much work. Like, a lot of people say that about things. And then I think they don't realize what their true potential is too. So you have to be open-minded, and you have to show up sometimes when you really feel like it's against the grain. You have to go, no, I'm gonna show up and do this. It's about showing up.
I really love,
you know,
it's not just the showing up part that I really love that you just said it, when it even feels against the grain.
Oh my gosh.
Because that, like, get out of my head, Dustin.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Totally, because I'm like, no, that doesn't feel like I should be doing it. You know, but maybe that's fear speaking and it's disguised. And I just need to get over it and try it.
Sometimes you might not actually, maybe you're not supposed to be doing it.
That
might actually be the case. You might show up and be like, nope, not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
And that's a moment, as Mariah Carey would say. But that's the truth then. But then, instead of questioning it in the back of your brain going, oh, I wonder how that would have went if I showed up, you go, I know that's not for me now.
Yeah.
Because you showed up and you really tried. And in that moment, you were like, this is terrible. So then maybe you had to work 6 or 8 hours in a job that you really found out, or some form of life that like was not for you.
Yeah.
But now you know, like, you can say with confidence, I know that's not for me, instead of questioning it.
I just watched this designer give a talk that, you know, it's one of those sort of I'm out on a stage, black stage, blah, blah, blah. And she was actually terrific. But the one thing that really stuck with me, and you kind of nailed it. She said, confidence, it's kind of overrated. Courage is better, because confidence, let's face it, you just get confidence when you repeat something and you get good at it. Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
But courage is doing the things that are really tough that you don't know about doing. And so it just sounds like you're really talking about that.
Yeah.
Which is everything that you're trying.
Yeah. Everything. It takes courage to like step out of the box and create. And even I was just thinking about this the other day, and this is me being very vulnerable right now. I said to David, my partner, the other night, I was like, I said, you know, this book's gonna be out there for everyone to read. For the first time, I like that moment
that clicked.
Yeah, I was like, oh, but that's what you do when you create. That's the risk you take. And honestly, you have to find that place of going, if you're doing your best work and you're pushing yourself and you're doing what you love, then ultimately you've got to find a way to make it not matter what people say, and it is going to be out there, and you were creative and it took courage, but that's the risk. Everything in life is a risk. Falling in love is a risk. Getting an apartment is a risk. Getting an animal is a risk. Like you take risk because you've got to figure out how to manage things in your life and take feedback that comes with it or whatever it is, criticism.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, this has been terrific.
Yeah.
We could talk on forever, but
Yes,
this
yes.
has been so delightful just to hear
You're amazing.
the in depth of it.
I'm so
I love
glad
it.
you're here.
Oh, likewise. I'm glad I'm here. Well, I can't wait to see season 3 and feel
Fantastic.
like yeah,
I can't wait to film it.
and I can't wait to see my name in print in that cookbook.
Oh
That's
my
going to
gosh.
be amazing.
I think we're just going to put it on the cover. Yeah.
Can I say Dustin Harder and then parentheses and?
Yep, absolutely.
Something like that.
It's done.
I'm looking forward to it. Hello. I'm good. Give me a minute. I'm actually having a tech issue. I can't seem to get you in the right audio. Oh, talk again.
Hi, it's me. I'm here.
Oh my God, I fixed it.
Excellent.
I'm practically a genius.
Look at the good you do.
Since we talked in August, I know you've done a ton and you've actually accomplished almost all the future projects you talked about. What's been going on since we met in August?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked a lot about, I was about to go off to Italy and film season 3 of my series, The Vegan Roadie, and I went. It was so fast and so jam-packed, but we got a lot done. We did 6 episodes in 3 weeks, 6 regions, and
you were working, actually, while I was there, you were working on your first cookbook, which is just about to come out. Actually, when this airs, it'll have just come out. So you wrap that up. Tell me a little bit about that, or maybe just a big takeaway of what you got out of that first experience.
Yeah, I mean, again, this year was a big, or 2017 going into now. I mean, it was a huge year for me on sort of letting go and collaborating. I worked for months, recipe testing and trying to get things just the way I wanted them. And then it was handing it over to a team and being okay with them taking my vision and seeing what they saw in it and designing a book and, photographing it and editing it. And, I was still involved in the process, but then it becomes a conversation. It's not just my choice. It becomes a conversation of what we all think is going to sort of do best and what will resonate with people. So it's been a big year of collaboration for me. I grew up in theater, so I was used to collaborating, but when it comes to your own stuff like this, it's a bigger learning experience to sort of know that, take a moment and say, everyone's bringing something to the table. You have to respect that. Everybody wants to create something that's good,
The series is coming out just around the same time as the book, and then, so that's in the next couple of weeks here.
Well, so by the time this plays, the series comes out, it'll have been out February 13th and the book February 6th. So yeah.
Well, it was so good to catch up.
Good to catch up with you too, Christopher.
I think Dustin's become my muse for career transformation. He's created something all new, found his niche that he loves, and he's so committed. Or the way I see it, when you want something bad enough, you're all in. I had a little time to think about this interview before I recorded this part of the show. And I have to say, I feel even more inspired to do more with my story. Dustin's using his power to shape the way people think, and that's what I'm trying to do too. Gosh, he was the perfect inspiration for me. Also, he's such an adorable guy. I can say adorable, right? Sorry, it seems weird, but he totally is. Now I just need to try his cooking. Hint, hint, Dustin. Okay, you can find Dustin online just by searching The Vegan Roadie on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Also, head over to mybigstory.show and you'll find more info there. As usual, I took some photos with Dustin and you can find those on my socials. Come follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher and on Facebook at @TheChristopherSwan. Before I wrap all of this up, I want to share something about this trip to New York. It was amazing and full of so many unexpected turns. And the last episode, you heard about my kind of stressful lost phone incident. I also had the worst delayed flights each way, like seriously late, and not a lot of sleep. But, and that's a big but, while in New York, I met a ton of new people from Instagram and just on the street. I randomly ran into friends from LA and celebrated their birthday that night. I saw Bette Midler and Hello Dolly. Amazing. And finally had some soft serve at the big gay ice cream shop. And there was, of course, a ton more. So here's my call to action for you. Go out and experience the world and meet people. This is how we find inspiration. Okay, last thing. Sign up for my Be Inspired newsletter for super cool inspiration that I personally love, and you can do that at christopherswan.info, I-N-F-O. And if you love what you're hearing, go tell a friend, give me a review online, please and thank you. And finally, this season is produced with the help of Nick Jaworski over at Podcast Monster. If you need some help, give him a holler. Thanks for joining me on my big adventure, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Christopher Swan, and this is my big story.